A woman parks her car and gets out. A man with a hoodie comes from behind, takes his gun out and finishes her. We then jump to Alex and Melissa, two best friends, getting dropped off to school by Marissa's dad, in his police car. Jameso takes Alex aside. He is nervous as they had their first time yesterday. He wants to make sure he didn't hurt her. The bell rings and the first class of the year begins. Minutes later, they are interrupted by a knock on the door. It's Marissa's dad. With a severe tone, he asks Alex to grab her stuff and come with him. Both officers escort her outside and drive away. Alex keeps asking what's going on. Marissa's dad finally reveals there was an accident at the pet store, and her mom got hurt. The car then arrives at the scene of the incident. She realizes it's her mom's car and immediately rushes to it. We are revealed that the woman from the beginning of the film was her mom. Alex finds her laying on the ground and start crying. Detective Joseph suddenly grabs her and throws her outside of the yellow lines, screaming at officers for letting her in. Alex is then brought back to her brother and sister. She doesn't want to tell them what happened, but they turn on the TV and learn the tragic news. They collapse. Meanwhile, Nick, Alex's father, is brought to identify the body. He is welcomed by Detective Joseph and his partner Reed. Nick breaks in tears and they leave him alone. Moments later, they bring him for questioning. They ask him where was he at the time of the murder. But Nick gets angry they even question him. He just wants to know what happened and go to his kids. At the funeral, Joseph is present observing everyone. A man named Frank comes to say some nice words to Alex. Nick realizes it and immediately takes her aside. He confronts Frank saying it's inappropriate he is here. He tells him to stay away from his family. Detective Joseph meets Alex outside and gives her his card. He wants her to help him find her mother's killer. The next day, Joseph and Reed are at work on the case. Joseph is determined in finding the killer. Alex is participating in a race. She ends up winning and her father's best friend and boyfriend congratulate her. Alex is surprised her father showed up. They all get home and realize Nick bought Alex's brother a dirt bike. He is so happy to have what he dreamed of. Alex isn't sure it's safe as her mom said no before. But Nick shuts her down, saying it's his decision. The next day, he tells his kids it's time to pack up their mother's clothes. As soon as he says that, the atmosphere changes and the kids looks at him in a weird way. He justifies it by saying it's a good way to move on. Joseph is being screamed by his boss for not a lead on the case. How can it be no witnesses when it happened in bright daylight? Even the reward money offered isn't working. Marissa's father then enters and Joseph asks him about Alex. He confirms she is a good kid. Meanwhile, the kids and their father getting rid of the mother's stuff. The kids are devastated. Alex then goes to talk to Detective Joseph. But they don't let them see him because she is 17. They require a parent to be present. She leaves but Joseph witnessed the whole encounter. That night, he goes to their house and announces they are closing the case. The mother had no enemies so they believed it was a random act. The kids are angry at this news. The next day, Jameso confronts Alex on not coming to a party they had, and her ignoring him and her friends for the past few weeks. At this moment, she gets a call from Joseph who asks her to meet at a dinner. Even though the case is closed, he never stopped working on it. He doesn't believe it was a random act, and asks her again for her help to find the killer. Alex agrees. But because she is a minor, Joseph tells her to keep this a secret. He adds that he believes it's someone who knew her who killed her. The next day, as soon as everyone leaves, Alex starts looking in her mother's things but doesn't find anything. Joseph asks if she searched in her father's things. She gets confused, so he tells her that her father is a suspect, but she gets mad and wants to leave. Joseph reveals her father had an affair with a bartender named Berthie. Hearing that, Alex sits back down all shocked. Joseph tells her if she believes her father is innocent, then to help to prove it by going through his stuff. Days later, while going through her dad's files, she finds a receipt for a new Mustang in his name and Berthie. Now she believes he really had an affair. They now entertain the possibility of Nick being the killer. Joseph shares his motivation in solving this case. He lost his sister and the case was never closed. Weeks go by and on Christmas night, Nick takes his car and leaves in the middle of the night. Alex follows him. He goes to a bar and meets with Berthie. Alex follows them and witnesses them being intimate with each other. She calls Joseph to tell him. When she gets home, Nick, who comes back realizing her car is still warm, wonders where has she been. She lies she was with her boyfriend Jameso. The next day, she brings all her dad's files to Joseph. He has 2 hours to make copies until she puts it back before her father comes back home. Some officers at the dinner recognize Joseph. They tell it to Reed, who confronts him. But Joseph doesn't want to talk about it. The next day, Alex catches Marissa and Jameso together. Marissa reveals they are together now. Alex gets home all in her emotions. She gets mad at her dad and reveals she knows he is having an affair. She even says the name Berthie. Nick is in shock. That night, Alex goes to confront Berthie at the bar she works at. She asks her if she killed her mom. Berthie takes her aside and confirms her suspicions of Nick having something to do with the murder. Alex then comes home. Nick gets mad at her for being late. She screams at him for still having an affair with Berthie in the middle of the night. He slaps her and immediately regrets it. The next day, Alex meets with Joseph, revealing she spoke to Berthie. Joseph realizes some officers are following them, spying on them. He is able to drive away from them and asks Alex to go try to find the murder weapon in the house. Instead, she finds a birth certificate showing that Frank is her real father. She immediately goes to ask him and confirms it's true. He reveals he and her mother were married. She decided to break up and go with Nick. Days later, Joseph reveals to Alex he found out Nick hired an assassin named Bruce to kill her mother. But at the end, Bruce wasn't able to do it. Back at home, Alex searches more and finds a hidden gun. She immediately calls Joseph. He tells her to put the gun back and gives her a place and time to meet tomorrow. They meet and Joseph asks her to bring the gun to the station for fingerprint. Alex comes home, get the gun. When she is about to leave, she learns Nick is taking only her brother and sister on a surprise trip. Meanwhile, Joseph's boss takes him aside for a talk. Nick tells Alex he knows she has the gun in her bag. Joseph's boss confronts him on working with a minor, but Joseph tells him he is so close to back him up. Nick reveals the mom found out about Berthie and wanted a divorce. He goes after Alex and tries to finish her. At this moment, Joseph bursts in the house, kicks Nick out and arrests him. Outside, Alex's brother and sister are so confused. Days later, Joseph has been put on trial for breaking the law and working and putting a minor in danger. Alex reminds them without this action the killer wouldn't have been caught. Joseph ends up being found guilty. Nick on sentenced to 10 years in prison. Alex's brother and sister still thinks Nick is innocent, and stopped talking to her for helping Joseph arrest their father. The movie ends with Alex changing her last name to the same as Frank, and graduating college with her real father by her side. This story is inspired by actual events.